starting with the $2,400 and looking at what it's been averaging over the 8-year return, it's been averaging a 65% compound annual growth rate. Okay, now for the next 13.11 years, let's drop that CAGR down to 20%. 20%. And that still puts that coin over $20 million. It's insanity. Fiat currency is a cancer out there, and it's just eating everybody's economic energy. Perhaps maybe we should never really sell our Bitcoin. Maybe spend some of it, yes, but I never want to convert one Satoshi back to fiat currency. To me, that's kind of like trading gold for lead. Always have that get-rich-slow scheme, and I think Bitcoin is probably the best get-rich-slow scheme there is out there, period. If we can even get one person that's watching this today to get off zero, then I think our mission today is accomplished. Now is as good a time as any, if not even better, to get into Bitcoin. It's still going to work for you. It's still going to give you a compound annual growth rate. So if you're sitting on the sidelines, think twice.
Then, hi, Jim. How are you doing? Everything fine on your end?
Everything's good, Robin. Thanks for having me back. It's an honor to be here and support your podcast. I think you're doing fine work, and anything that I can do to help you out, you know who to call.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Before we get started, maybe for the few people that haven't watched the first episode of that we have done, give the people some overview of like who you are, how you found Bitcoin, and especially why you are so excited about Bitcoin.
Right. In my life, I've only had a handful of things that have really been able to redirect my life and change my life in a substantial way. And Bitcoin has certainly been up there. And, financially, it's probably the number one thing that has changed my life. But it's had so many positive aspects. And what happened was I had watched a documentary with the late Morgan Spurlock. He's the guy who made the Super Size Me video years ago about McDonald's. And he had done a documentary about Bitcoin. And at the time it was like $660 a coin. And it didn't really grab me. I mean, his supersized video was great for me, but his documentary on Bitcoin for some reason didn't grab me. So I kind of put it on the back burner to look into it. And Margaret, my better half, she asked me to go buy her a pair of sunglasses. So I went to overstock.com to check out and get her a pair of sunglasses. And I seen they accepted Bitcoin, and that struck me right away. And I thought, oh, that's what I watched that documentary about. So I went back real quick and Googled it and found the price, was up to $2,400. And I thought, my gosh, what is this? I've never seen anything move so quickly. And that was only about 6 months later that I went to buy those sunglasses. So I said, you know what? I'm an idiot for not digging into this. Let me just go ahead and buy one of these Bitcoin things, and I'll put my toe in the water, get some skin in the game. And it was only $2,400, but still, I didn't want to lose $2,400. I'm retired, and you don't want to throw money away. So I just said, okay, it's not going to make or break me to throw $2,400 at this thing. And then it gives me maybe a new hobby, something to learn about. And that happened to be one of the best decisions of my life. So I bought one, immediately started learning about it, and I've never stopped. It's been over 8 years now, Robin, and I'm still learning. As you know, being in this space, you never stop learning, and it's given me an incredible education and a new outlook on life that I never thought I would get. Being in my 60s, I never thought I would discover something like this. So it's been life-changing to me. And it continues to be life-changing to me. I continue to learn. I continue to evangelize it here. I live out in California, although right now I'm in Warsaw, Poland, and I'm even evangelizing it here. I've already had my first meeting with one of Margaret's relatives, he was fortunate enough to listen to me years ago about this, and so I had another meeting with him, and he did end up buying some, and he's happy he did. So I evangelize anywhere I go. It doesn't matter what city or state. Most of it's done in the desert area of California, in the Palm Springs area. And I've met a lot of good people out there. It's been a very positive thing. It's enriched my life with new friends. It's given me something to look forward to. It's given me some hope for the future of humanity. And if you're sitting on the sidelines, don't sit there much longer. It's a good time to get into Bitcoin today. People say, "Oh, I wish I would have been you and got in 8 years ago." Well, Robin, I've been through a couple cycles, and it's although I've learned a lot, it's been a bumpy road, and I think now is as good a time as any, if not even better, to get into Bitcoin. It's still going to work for you. It's still going to give you a compound annual growth rate. So if you're sitting on the sidelines, think twice.
Yeah, the risk reward profile might never have been better than right now, because not like the thing that we don't talk about when we think about, oh, I wish I would have bought 8 years ago or 10 years ago. The question marks around Bitcoin were totally different 10 years ago, 15 years ago, where we now figured out a lot of the things that we honestly figured out now, and we hadn't had figured out them. Like just as a small example, the block size war was a big one where we kind of proved how resilient the network is. We now kind of we lived through the Bitcoin mining exit of China in 2021, and many are like the richest person alive, with Elon Musk kind of half attacking it, with like embracing it and then dunking on it, and the market absorbed it. So like all those small examples where Bitcoin really showed how strong it is. And because of that, all the question marks are now smaller, and like there's not a lot of question marks left to prove for Bitcoin. But we're still so early in the price development and in the adoption and development. So you could make an argument that the risk reward, honestly, hasn't never been really better than right now, like 2025, around that era. Maybe like a year ago it was even better, because not that many questions were answered in the last 1 year and the price was better. But like the risk reward is like massively attractive for me, even if you come in Bitcoin in 2025.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Robin. I can only go by my personal experience in Bitcoin, and I look back and just do the math all the time. So I'd like to talk a little about the compound annual growth rate of Bitcoin, if that's okay with you, and my experience with it. And it's sometimes when I do the math, and it's not my math. I'm not sitting there with a piece of paper or a calculator or anything. I'm obviously using AI to do the math, because some of these math questions are rather complicated, and I would trust AI over my math any day. So I sit there and I punch in numbers, and any way I punch these numbers in, it's just mind bending to me. I just sometimes I have to do it twice and just look it over, because I think that just can't be right. But it is. And so I'll share with your audience, my experience with, for instance, my first Bitcoin that I bought, and that was June 2nd, 2017. I ended up buying one Bitcoin, and it was $2,400 at the time. Like I said, I just wanted to put my toe in the water to see what this thing was. And so I kind of, even just using that one Bitcoin and extrapolating that out, because that's my beginning point. You have to put in your time in Bitcoin, but it seems to work over and over and over again, even for myself. So starting with the $2,400 and looking at what it's been averaging over the 8-year return, it's been averaging a 65% compound annual growth rate, which is, it's hard to believe. I mean, if you told somebody that, they would say, oh, it's some kind of a, scam or a scheme or something. Nothing can return that kind of return, but it has. So I started really doing the math on this just to extrapolate this out and see if I just stick with that first coin and I extrapolate it out for another 13.11 years. Now keep that in mind. This is how crazy these numbers get. It's hard to believe. So basically for 21.24 years, if you start with $2,400, and anybody can do the math on this at home, and you extrapolate that out for 21 years at a 65% compound annual growth rate, Robin, believe it or not, you hit parity in Bitcoin. You hit $1 for one Satoshi. That's 100 million, and you heard that right, dollars per Bitcoin at a 65% CAGR for 21.24 years. Now, I'm not saying it's going there. but it's done it for 8 years. So I started thinking, okay, I wouldn't believe that it's going to average a 65% compound annual growth rate going forward, forever. And certainly maybe not even for the next 10 years. So what would be something more in lines with what I'm researching and what seems to be the consensus out there? So I dropped it way down, Robin. So imagine this. So for the first 8 years, I put in the AI, compound this at 65% for the first 8 years at $2,400 at my entry price for my first coin. So again, that came up to a number. And I said, okay, now for the next 13.11 years, let's drop that CAGR down to 20%. 20%. And that still puts that coin over $20 million. It's insanity. And let's say it doesn't even hit a 20% compound annual growth rate going forward, which I think that's realistic. I think a 20% CAGR for the next decade or so is realistic. But even if you drop that down, it's still life-changing money. Even if you drop it down to 10% compound annual growth rate, 5% compound annual growth rate, it still turns out to be millions of dollars over the next decade. I do think that's going to happen. I'm not so certain that the parity, the dollar per sat's going to happen over the next 13 years. I wouldn't rule it out happening in the long run, extrapolating it out far enough into the future. But I even did some of that just for fun to see where we're at with percentages as well. I not only used compound annual growth rate, but I started using percentages. And as crazy as it is, if we go back to 2009, Bitcoin started out roughly, we'll just say at a penny, but it actually started out at 0.8 of a cent, I believe, was the first Bitcoins that were mined. But we'll just start it out at a penny, and we'll take that to $100,000 Bitcoin. Now I know it's over that today, but I just stopped at $100,000 for simplicity. Do you know that's a 1,000,000,000% increase, Robin? A 1,000,000,000% increase from 1 penny to $100,000 is a 1,000,000,000%. So I said, that's insane. So I thought, okay, so what's the next stop for Bitcoin? Everybody's talking about $1 million Bitcoin. And there's a lot of people saying, yeah, no, it's never going to hit $1 million, just like they said it was never going to hit 10,000, 100,000, 50,000, and so on. And I did the percentage. For Bitcoin where it is today, to get to $1 million, Robin, it's only 734 more percent. Now, if it's gone up 1,000,000,000% in 16 years, to go up another 734% is nothing more than a hiccup. It's nothing more than a rounding error in the whole math. And I said, wow, that's crazy. So what would it take on a percentage basis to get to that $100 million Bitcoin? 84,000 more percent. So if Bitcoin moves up 84,000 more percent, it'll be roughly $100 million a coin, which sounds crazy. But again, when you look at a 1,000,000,000% increase and it's only got to go up 84,000 more percent to get to $100 million, that's something I wouldn't bet against either. It's just, I don't know if it's going to get there in my lifetime. I do think that's a real possibility in the future to get to those kind of numbers, because at the end of the day, they're not going to stop printing money. So as long as they have that money printer on, which it seems like it's on permanently, Bitcoin's just going to continue to revalue the rest of the world. So again, I thought you'd find some of those numbers quite intriguing, because I have to do them sometimes more than once to believe my own eyes.
It's so interesting because every time I think about what's the full potential of Bitcoin, like where are we going in 10 years, 50 years, 100 years, 1,000 years? Or like better ask, like, where are we going if Bitcoin is actually successful? And I truly think Bitcoin will be the world reserve asset and maybe currency. And I have a very simple calculation, and it might be a little bit too simple. And I just took the world population and I put it at 10 billion people, not like 8 point whatever it is. Just because I think the population will grow a little bit. And I took 15 million coins and not the 21 million, because I do think coins will be lost. There might be this thing where we might break up old wallets and then it's like 21 million again, but let's keep it simple with just like 15 million, but the numbers are not that different. So if we have that, we have, what is it, 0.0015 Bitcoin per person. And I looked up what the average wealth currently is. And the average wealth point is around like 90K. So like if you just take like what a person is, person's wealth is and put the average on there, you have like 100K roughly. Obviously, that's not the median, that's the average. So like it's a little bit screwed to the upsides because of like really rich people, but that's the average wealth. And this would put, if you put then 0.0015 Bitcoin at 100K, that would put Bitcoin at $67 million per coin, which is still under the 100 million, still under the dollar parity. But that's right now my best guess if someone asks me, oh, like what's kind of the potential? Because like investors always want to know. I come from the investing world. I come from like the stock world, and people always want to know what's the TAM, like what's the total addressable market for Bitcoin. If everyone works out perfectly, I personally think we could reach the $67 million in today's dollars terms. So with inflation, we will definitely hit the parity. Then it's like not that interesting because like what can you buy from that? I think you made that ice cream example in the last episode.
I like to talk about inflation and the inflation that I've witnessed in my life, which is staggering. Matter of fact, I think finally we're seeing the signs. Even here, I haven't been to Europe in 2 years, and this time was a different trip. I usually come here, and the dollar is very powerful here, especially in Poland, because they're not using the euro; they use their own currency. And this time, I can clearly see that the inflation is here, and it's a different experience. This time, it's certainly affecting the entire world. Fiat currency is a cancer out there, and it's just eating everybody's economic energy. And it's just sad. But we have an option now. We have a tool in our toolbox to opt out of inflation. And I'll share with you this. I like to kind of share my experience of what it's done for us. And I was fortunate enough. I was in the telecommunications business for 25 years, and I was able to sell out and retire and take an early retirement at 49. So I've had a lot of time to myself, and Bitcoin came along at a good time for me to get a hobby going, because I really needed to exercise my mind and get my thoughts going again. And it has taken over my life in a lot of ways, but for the better. And one thing that it's done for Margaret and I is it's made our life free, Robin. So people say, well, I say it's a deflationary technology. It's the most deflationary technology that I've ever seen in my life, probably on the planet. It makes things cheaper. Well, what it's done for us, and I'm going to go back to 2017 and start there. In 2017, we ended up purchasing, I won't say how many coins, but we ended up purchasing a number of Bitcoin. What it's done now after 8 years and a 65% compound annual growth rate, it's made everything free. So whatever we spend, we basically, in essence, get a refund, because our Bitcoin continues to outgrow what we're spending annually. Now, we're not selling the Bitcoin, don't get me wrong there, but we're in essence getting a refund for everything that we're spending. I mean, I just, it's hard to believe. I mean, I would have never thought anything like this could have been possible, but thank you, Satoshi Nakamoto out there, whoever you are, or the people, whoever created Bitcoin. And it just seems to work. The other day I found an old cold storage wallet that I have, Robin. And I said, oh, I don't use this. I'm not using this. I bought it and I set it up, and I said, I think I put some Bitcoin in there. So, I went back and looked, and I opened it up, and I had put $100 worth of Bitcoin in that cold storage wallet. I guess it was probably around 2.5 years ago. Yeah, it's over $400 now. I mean, it just, every time I stack Satoshis, it just continues to never let me down. They just grow over time. The value of not the Satoshis grow, but you know what I mean? The valuation of those Satoshis versus the dollar continue to grow every single time. And we still stack sats. I mean, I've been stacking for 8 years, and I'm not going to stop. I don't save dollars anymore. I spend dollars as fast as I get them because they're guaranteed to lose value. And I put my economic energy in something that's guaranteed, in my opinion, guaranteed to gain value. And for 8 years, it's been doing just that. And so I'll continue to do this, hopefully for the rest of my life. But my goal every month is to have more Satoshis than I did the month before. And, there's a lot of great ways for your listeners out there to stack Satoshis now that we didn't have at the beginning. And one of my favorite ways to do it is I use a Bitcoin-backed credit card, and I stack that way. I'm out here in Poland stacking Satoshis, spending, and I have more every day than I had the day before. So there's a lot of easy ways to do it. Dollar cost averaging is a good way. I also dollar cost average every week. Every Tuesday, I have more sats than I did the week before because that's my dollar cost average day, just a random day that I chose. It doesn't seem to make a difference what day you choose of the week or when you dollar cost average. At this point, looking back, Robin, you could have bought the peak of every cycle and still be up. I mean, it's that crazy. So for people that don't want to play around with it and go, oh, I don't want to try to time the peaks and this, just set a dollar cost average and forget about it, and it'll take care of the rest for you. But that's some of the ways that it's positively influenced our life now, where I feel like, oh my gosh, it's giving us a refund.
I love the view of like, even if you bought all the tops, you're still up on your Bitcoin like over a long period of time, because if people are trying to time the market, people always ask me, like literally, I'm now getting the calls and the text messages again from friends and families. Oh, like, is it now a good time to buy Bitcoin? And I'm like, yeah, like as always, like I've been in Bitcoin now 5 years, and every single day of those 5 years was a good time to buy Bitcoin. And you have been up since forever. Like you couldn't pick a time where you're not up from in the last 5 years. So it's an impossible task. Buy Bitcoin, hold it for 5 years, and be negative on that. Like that's an impossible task to do, no matter how badly you timed it. And the best, of course, as you said, is just like DCA, like do like every day, every week, every month, whatever your frequency is, and just pick one and just go with it. I like that. You also said something with getting rich quick versus getting rich slowly. That you want to talk about that. I'm really curious how you look at that.
Yeah, I wish I had $1, Robin, for every time someone says, they want to be rich. I think we've all heard it. I've had a lot of people in my life ask me, how do I get rich? Or I want to be rich. And that's okay. I get that. It's like, okay. I mean, I've thought that many times in my life throughout my careers and stuff. I want to get rich, right? And so I've ran into so many people that have a get rich quick scheme. And that's okay. When people ask me how to get rich, I tell them, well, invent Facebook or win the lottery, if you want to get rich quick. Otherwise, if you want to get rich, you might want to have a get rich slow scheme. And I kind of consider Bitcoin not a get rich quick scheme. I kind of consider it a get rich slow scheme. It's something that you have to put in your time. And if you put in your time, you do your homework, you read about it, learn about it, so you stay focused on it. It's very important not just to buy it and put it away and never learn anything about it, because you're likely going to make a mistake with it one day, or you're going to lose your keys, or you're going to sell it for dollar or fiat currencies one day. And I'm one that believes that perhaps maybe we should never really sell our Bitcoin. Maybe spend some of it, yes, but I never want to convert one Satoshi back to fiat currency. To me, that's kind of like trading gold for lead. When I hear people, oh, I sold my Bitcoin, it's like, oh, what, you sold gold for lead. And I get it. People sometimes have to take profits and whatnot. Fortunately, we're in a position where we don't have to take profits, and we can continue to grow this and leverage it over time if we want, borrow against it, and whatnot, if we need to tap into some of that economic energy. And there's going to be plenty of opportunities for that. I'm certain about that. But again, at the end of the day, I think that it's great to have a get rich quick idea in your head, maybe a business you're working on, something you're going to get rich quick, but always have that get rich slow scheme. And I think Bitcoin is probably the best get rich slow scheme there is out there period. Because if you just continue to pour your economic energy in there, it will grow. And you got to put energy in, Robin, if you want to get energy out. So if you want to grow your economic energy, you've got to work. You've got to take that economic energy and put it into something like Bitcoin, so it can sit there and grow. And that brings up another, an interesting thought that I had with Bitcoin. For me, it's, and I think for a lot of people, it can be like a refinery where you're shoveling fiat currency into the refinery, and out the other end is coming your freedom, your time, your economic energy is growing and multiplying there. So it's in a way you can give yourself a raise. So think about it. Let's say you're making X amount of dollars per week or euro or whatever country you're in, and you wish that you were getting paid 2 or 3 times that amount of money. Well, this is an opportunity to refine that fiat. So you can take a portion of that check, you can throw it into the refinery, the Bitcoin refinery, and out the other side, it'll start multiplying that paycheck. Now, what that'll do for you is basically, in a weird way, it'll buy you time. I mean, we can't buy more time. That would be nice if we could, spend $1 million and get 10 more years out of life. That's not likely to happen. But what we can do with the Bitcoin, using it as a refinery, is we can make more of that time ours. So instead of having to sell so much time for fiat currency, we can, if we start putting it in now, we can retire earlier, and more of that time can be ours instead of selling it to somebody else. So in a way, it's kind of like creating time, if that makes sense to you, Robin.
And I think Mark Zuckerberg is a really interesting example because it's an extraordinary fast timeline. And I looked at the math before he started it. I think 2004 it was, or at some year he started it. And just like a half a year later, Peter Thiel invested and the company valuation was already at 5 million. So this is like very uncommon and extremely freaking rare. Like most companies, to get to a substantial amount of valuation take around 3 to 5 years, and only a small percent, I think it was like 8 or 7% of all companies that are built even getting to 4 years, and most of them don't get to such valuation. So it's like you either play in the casino or you try some big thing like that, which you could do. It's definitely possible, but it's not something that is for sure happening. It's more likely that you make if you make a profitable company and you make some equity play, you make probably like really good money, and you make the really good money if you then take that money and then invest it in a get rich slow scheme like Bitcoin. In over 10-20 years, you're like, oh shit, like I make a freaking ton of money with that small business that I have, and with the get rich slow scheme. The same thing with a job that pays you good, or like anything that you do. And one thing I also hear, and I hear that sometimes in the comment, and I'm curious what you say about that, because people tell me, oh, it's great that you have Bitcoin, but like I don't have any money to invest in Bitcoin. And I'm always like, yeah, like that's a different problem. Bitcoin will not solve your income problem. It saves your savings problem and not your income problem. And people really sometimes urge for that, like, oh, I want to have that one coin that I just invest like $20 in and it is like at millions of dollars tomorrow. It's weird because we've talked how quickly Bitcoin is growing, but for some people it's still not fast enough. They want to hit that casino, that lottery. And I'm curious how you think about that, especially like I think like my generation and my younger generation is more prone to really get in this casinos and get rich quick schemes, where that's why I think my channel viewership is in general like a little bit older than me, like it's around like 45 years old, the average viewer. So I'm just curious what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, well, like I said previously, so many people want that instant gratification. They want to be rich now. Well, I get it, but the probability is, unless you invent Facebook or win the lottery, that's probably not going to happen, or your Uncle Cecil passes away and leaves you tons of money or something. It's not likely to happen. So have a backup plan out there. Have the get rich slow scheme, because I can tell you one thing. You're for speaking from experience. One one day you're 20, the next day you're 40, the next day you're 60. And the time just passes so quickly that if you've got that get rich slow scheme in there, at least you're not going to be suffering when you get older. And for myself, I can already tell, I'm 61, be 62 in January. I can already tell how important money is as we get older. It's so much more important than when I was younger. When I was younger, I just wanted to buy everything. I want that fancy car. I want, the Rolex watch. I wanted all this materialistic stuff. But as I've gotten older, I've become more of a minimalist, and I've realized that I just want the money to make sure that I can take care of my health, and I can live a long, happy, healthy life for the years that I have left. And when I pass away, then I can leave my loved ones something as well, some generational wealth. Today I was actually, before the podcast here, I went to grab some water in one of the convenience stores here in Warsaw. And I see this in the United States too, and I find it very sad, and I don't want to be that person. Matter of fact, I'm not going to be that person because I stopped buying lottery tickets. My lottery tickets now are Bitcoin. I know instead of spending $5 or $10 on a lottery ticket, if I buy $5 or $10 worth of Satoshis, I know that's a winning ticket. So I might have to put in some time, but I know that's going to grow, and that's 100% winner. And I'll take that any day over, 1 in, 100 million odds or something being struck by lightning. So I was in the convenience store checking out, and here was this elderly lady in front of me. She had to be in her 80s. I would say 83, 84 years old. And she was kind of backing the line up a little bit. And I was thinking, well, what is she doing? And she has an envelope in her hands, and she's opening it, and it's just full of lottery tickets. And I just thought, that's not going to be me. I am not going to be in liquor stores or grocery stores buying lottery tickets when I'm 80 some years old. I thought, that's horrible. That's a horrible plan. And it's just because she didn't plan in life, right? I mean, and then that's where a lot of people fail. They don't plan. It's not that they fail in life; they just fail to plan. So they don't have that get rich slow scheme in place. And it's been a good decade or plus to get rich slowly as well, even in conventional markets. Heck, if you had just had one of the top stocks out there, you've done well over the last decade. But nothing like Bitcoin. I mean, nothing's returns anything close to Bitcoin. So I also, I wanted to tell you, I wanted to ask you a question, actually, Robin. I was doing some more of that math about Bitcoin, and I ran across something that I wanted to ask you. So I'm going to ask you a question. How many Satoshis back in 2009 do you think you could have bought for $1? Time's up. I can't use a calculator now or AI, but the crazy part about it is you could have bought 10 billion Satoshis for $1. Let that sink in. 10 billion. And that was one of those math ones I had to do 3 times to make sure I was looking at the right numbers, because I think I said on my previous podcast with you that I like to actually look at how many Satoshis I can get for $1 more than the price of Bitcoin, because that motivates me. And just when I turned 60, I got, and I think I mentioned this in my last podcast, I got a block clock. Margaret bought me a block clock for my birthday, and I set it to be able to look at how many Satoshis, you could buy per $1. And that was a year and a half ago. And a year and a half ago, you could buy for $1 Satoshis for $1. Now it's like 845 Satoshis or something at the current price for $1. And it started out at 10 billion. So where do you think this is going? I mean, to me, it looks obvious where it's going. It looks like it's going to parity one day. And I can see that. I don't know if it's going to happen in my lifetime. It doesn't even matter if it's going to happen in my lifetime. I just think that's real likely to happen. Your $67 million prediction, I mean, that's close enough. Even if it just gets there, that's mind-bending wealth. But I thought I'd share that with you because it's hard to believe. You probably never heard that before, have you? 10 billion Satoshis for $1.
The first time I ever made any money, I got myself from that money a watch. And ever since then, I collect timepieces to remember times where I achieved some milestone. That's why I got the Bitcoin 2025 edition when I went to my first ever American Bitcoin conference. So for me, the Bitcoin watches from CoinVigilante represents the time that we are living in. For every person that wears a Bitcoin watch, I know they are representing sound money to the outside world. Make sure to check out those amazing CoinVigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. I know how big of a hurdle it can be to have self-custody, but it's so freaking important to make that first step. We have to make sure it's as easy and simple as possible. And that's exactly what BitBox did. BitBox created the simplest and the easiest hardware wallet to use to get into self-custody. So get yourself a BitBox down from the link in the description. And when you use code Robin, you even get a 5% discount. The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They're also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called Microseed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. And we have right now a summer sale going on for 15% off. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today for $186. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Again, that's microseed.io to get your last backup tool you ever need. I actually haven't heard that. Like 10 billion is like 2009, obviously it just got started, and you probably didn't even like, you just like use your laptop while you were working, and you didn't even need to spend the dollar to get some Satoshis. But yeah, it's fascinating when you look at those comparisons and those numbers, and you look at the future, you look at the past, and you're like typing it into ChatGPT, and you're like, wait, that cannot be true. Like those numbers cannot make sense right now. I'm also really curious on I'm two things. The one thing from your story, I don't know if we talked about it last time, but I've just heard it from you now with the accepting Bitcoin merchant sign that kind of orange pilled you. That's really interesting. I barely hear that as a orange pilling trigger. Most people come in like, oh, they see the price, and then they see the price 3 years again, and they're like, oh shit, like I should get involved in that. Or people getting orange pilled by someone in the family, or as you go around in your town and you just orange pill random people, which I love that you're doing. How important do you think is the overall acceptance and the mean of exchange side of things for the overall adoption for Bitcoin as you got to be in Bitcoin because of that acceptance sign?
Well, yeah, it's almost free advertisement, since Bitcoin doesn't have an advertising department. When we start to walk into stores and we start to see that they accept Bitcoin sign on the doors or the the decals near the credit card terminals and whatnot. I think that's a huge marketing opportunity for Bitcoin, and I think it's only going to help grow the adoption of Bitcoin. I'm out here, like I said, in Warsaw, and when I first started coming out here, Robin, I could only find one ATM machine, and that wasn't a lot of advertising out here. Now, when I walk around, I find more and more cantors. I call them cantors out here, which are exchanges, and they're common to see a Bitcoin exchange out here when we're walking. The ATMs have popped up everywhere out here. So again, that's part of the adoption process, is just to get it out there more, because people start seeing it. And I believe, I think it was MasterCard that just did the 150 million merchants now, that they got some kind of an agreement now where they can sign up 150 million merchants. So those merchants are going to be able to accept Bitcoin. They'll have probably stickers on their checkout terminals and cash registers and whatnot on the way out. And that's just going to, I think, when people see that, even if they're not really looking at it, subliminally, they'll see it, and it'll register in their mind that, oh, this isn't a scam. I thought this was a scam. I thought it was a scheme. My uncle lost money in Bitcoin. And people have lost money. They bought high and they sold low, and some people have lost their keys and whatnot. But at the end of the day, you've got to put some knowledge into what you're investing into. And unfortunately, a lot of those people didn't put any knowledge, so they ended up losing. But back to your point, I think it's really important. It did orange peel me to see that Overstock.com was accepting it. I thought, oh my gosh, I must have missed something when I watched that documentary. And I said, I don't know what I missed, but the price is now 4 times as great. And I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to buy, just because and obviously I made a mistake. I didn't think it was anything. And so I just thought, okay, what a great way to do it. Put your toe in the water and just get some. And it turned out to be the best decision of my life. And I orange peel people out in the desert all the time. I just helped a guy get in who ended up buying a substantial amount of Bitcoin in today's terms. And some people might buy whole Bitcoins that I talk to. Some people just might buy fractions. Some people might get on some dollar cost averaging. But for anybody who buys it and just holds it, it works for everybody. And that's what I love about Bitcoin. It doesn't matter. It doesn't discriminate. If you buy $10 worth, it's going to do the same thing with that $10 as it would do with $100 million. It's going to protect, preserve, and grow that purchasing power, which, again, it doesn't discriminate. It's not going to give the guy who has $100 million worth of Bitcoin some kind of a better rate, like the banking system would. It treats everybody equally. And I think that's fair. I mean, I don't know any other way that could be any better than that. So I tell people, look, this will work for you. Just get off zero, because I did the math on zero, by the way, Robin. And if you have zero Bitcoin and you have a 65% compound annual growth rate in 25 years, you still have zero. So you're going to have nothing. Get off zero and just try this thing. It just works. It just works. And learn about it, please. I had a lady, I'll share with you a quick testimonial on this one, a lady in Palm Springs. And it's probably been 10 months ago now. I talked to her about Bitcoin. I gave her a recommendation on an exchange to use. And I never heard anything from her after that. So about 8 months went by, and I had seen her many times, but I back off. I don't push. I figure, okay, I told her about it. If she's interested in it, she'll ask me more about it. I didn't hear anything from her. So I kind of thought, okay, well, maybe she didn't, she wasn't interested. She didn't do her homework. She didn't do anything I told her to do. But turns out she actually did. So she bought some Bitcoin. We started talking about Bitcoin again. And she said, oh yeah, I bought some of that Bitcoin stuff you told me to, but look it. And she shows me her app. I bought $3,000 worth, and look, it's still only like $3,000. And it was 8 months. Imagine 8 months goes by, right? She wants to be rich off $3,000 investment. And I said, you bought it how long ago? 8 months. I said, let me go grab my glasses. So I went and grabbed my glasses. I sat down next to her and I said, let me take a look at your application, if you don't mind. I said, let's go back in the history. And so she didn't even know how to do that. So I said, look, just click here. This shows your history. I said, look, here's when you bought it. You bought it 8 months ago. but look, you didn't buy $3,000 worth of Bitcoin. You only bought $2,000 worth of Bitcoin. And I said, it's worth $3,600 today, actually more now. This was 2 months ago. And I did the growth rate on it for her. And I said, do you realize you averaged an 80% growth rate on that? And she just looked at me like a deer caught in the headlights. Like, I thought I bought 3,000. I said, look, it's right here. You only bought 2,000. I said, you've probably never seen any kind of a growth rate like that before. And she said, I should start buying some more. And I said, I think so. I said, it's likely to continue to work. You may not gain 80% next year, but it's likely to continue to work. So I told her that she should probably just start dollar cost averaging in some more over time. And that was interesting because she never did anything else with it. She just bought it, forgot about it, and just let it sit there. And it still worked for her. Matter of fact, it worked really well for her for that time period. Now we know that can fluctuate over time. She could have been down for that particular time period. But again, we don't look at today or tomorrow or next year. We look at what it does in the current cycles that we've been in. And I personally think those cycles have permanently changed. I don't think there's enough time, getting off subject here, for those kind of cycles to continue any longer. There's just too much money and adoption coming into the space for there to be these long drawn out bear markets.
And it's super interesting. I looked at your Twitter beforehand, and it was super interesting because the last tweet that you actually wrote, I think it has been in a while, but I saw it, and it's a perfect sentence to describe what Bitcoin is, and I just want to read it out because I think it's brilliant. It's a brilliant sentence to describe what Bitcoin is. It's called, Bitcoin represents an ever-expanding universe of economic energy, continually growing and preserving your stored value over time. That sentence should be like put on a T-shirt. that I should run around in Austria with that T-shirt on.
Yeah, there'll be times when I'm walking around and Bitcoin, pops into my head. I mean, like, I can't imagine going an hour without it popping into my head, and that's okay. But I often think of things, profound statements, and I've got many of those. I don't share all of them, but I thought, what is it to me? What is Bitcoin to me? And that's why I started thinking about an ever expanding universe of economic energy, and that's what it is, Robin. It really is. You put energy in, and it just grows. It just multiplies. It's just growing your energy in there. And money is energy. And I mentioned this on your last podcast about my acronym for money. And I had come up with TIE, T-I-E, which in my opinion, money is time, information, and energy. And I just wanted an easy way for people to remember what money is, because at the end of the day, what I found out more than anything is that people don't know what money actually is, but they want a lot of it. Now, that doesn't make any sense to me. Imagine you want a lot of gold, Robin. You're just going to go out in your backyard and start digging a hole? No, you know better than you just don't go out in your backyard and start digging a hole to look for gold. If you want gold, you got to learn about gold, right? I mean, it just makes common sense. Well, people want a lot of money, but they don't want to learn about money. If you ask the average person, what is money? Oh, it's a store of value. Okay, well then, what are you using for a store of value? Because it's not that fiat currency in your pocket, because there's no store of value in that fiat currency. So I came up with another acronym, and I think I shared this with you at one time, for how I tell people to remember money. Of course, TIE, technology, information, energy. And then I also came up with the 3 key attributes of money, which I use the word SUM, S-U-M. A store of value, unit of account, medium of exchange. So money has to have those 3 attributes, and Bitcoin does. Our current system does not have the store of value. It actually has the opposite of that. It actually has the theft of value built into it. So they steal your economic energy. And I was thinking, if I wanted to be a master thief and I wanted to create the best theft device in the world, what would it be? Fiat currency. Because even if I've got it in my hand and I bury it under the ground, or I put it in the safety deposit box, or I give it to my Uncle Cecil to hold for me, or whatever I do with this money, I can't stop the government from stealing it. which is absolutely insane because when you steal something, you usually go take possession of something in order to steal it. But with fiat, they don't have to take possession of your money. You could bury it 1,000 feet deep and they don't even know where it's at on the planet. And it could be locked in a safety deposit box on the Titanic and they can still steal the energy from it, which is the best theft device ever created on the planet, fiat currency. If you're saving in that stuff, it's not going to end well for you. You're likely going to go broke, or you're going to have to continue to make more and more and more fiat just to keep up with the theft. And I don't know anybody that wants to sit there and just allow people to steal from them. They just aren't educated about it. They're not educated about money. They don't know what's happening. And Bitcoin is the best educator of all out there, Robin. I really believe it is. I haven't found anything that's even given me any better education about money and economic energy than Bitcoin has, even late in my life.
I love that comparison with imagine you work and you have someone at home that isn't your wife, that isn't your partner, that has nothing to do with you. He's a complete stranger to you, and he just comes once a month to you and gets like 10% of your paycheck, and you continue to get that man in or a woman in your house, and he just like grabs another 10%, grabs another 10%, and actually he grabs every year a little bit more off you. You are actually working for this man, but it's not as obvious for people with inflation, and it's kind of fascinating for me when I describe that so bluntly to people. They're like, "Oh no, that cannot be true." Like, "Oh no, like think about it. Like, what does the central banks do? Like, and all those things." And then they're like, "Oh, true. Actually, it is like it's a little bit like that." And I mean, Jeff Booth also talks about that. Like, imagine someone comes to your house every year and takes one item. You don't notice it the first year, but after 10 years, 20 years, your house is empty. And this fiat money, this inflation is like horrible.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a good way to look at it. They're just stealing one item a night out of your house, next thing you know, they're wheeling the refrigerator out and you got nothing in your home. And I think that's exactly what's happening. You know, what's interesting. Remember when there's all this battle going on, and I think some countries are probably going to do this where they're going to say you can't have self-custody of Bitcoin. I don't see any country in the world saying you can't have self-custody of fiat currency, because they don't care if you have self-custody of fiat because they can steal from it. It doesn't matter to them. But if you have self-custody of your Bitcoin, they can't steal that economic energy from you. And so again, if fiat was so great, I guess they would be banning self-custody of it, right? If it was so valuable. But it's not, obviously. It's we know what it is. It's and this may sound a little harsh to some people out there, but in my opinion, fiat currencies are nothing more than weapons of mass destruction. The social, moral, ethical, and cultural decay of what fiat currency does is a crime against humanity, in my opinion. It's absolutely a crime. I've watched my great country just getting in trouble. I've watched the decay in the United States, and it breaks my heart. The homeless population growing, the theft, the desperation that people are in, the things that they have to do that they don't want to do to make money just to feed their kids and put a roof over their head. It's just heartbreaking, and shame on the people behind this fiat currency system. I mean, it's disgusting, Robin. And I really want to help people. That's why I'm in this. I don't really earn any money doing this. I talk to anybody about it. I'm happy to help them in any way I can. I've spent more time helping people than I can even remember over the last 8 years. And I'm going to continue my journey. I like the boots on the ground approach. And I think we need a lot of people like you. We need a lot of people like me out there. If I tell someone and teach someone, and they tell someone and teach someone, and so on, that spreads really quick. And so we're both in this together. We're both doing a great job. I never thought I would be on a podcast. I never had any intentions of doing it, but I thought I should get out here and maybe share my message. If we can even get one person that's watching this today to get off zero, then I think our mission today is accomplished.
100%. And I totally agree with that. Like it's those small stories when someone comes up to me and at the conference and says like, "Hey, like your podcast Orange pilled me." I'm like, Oh man, like that's amazing. Like that's the whole reason why I started it in the first place, to get like one person at a time into Bitcoin, or if they're already interested in Bitcoin, getting them close into Bitcoin and showing them more, because there's so much more to learn. And one thing that you also mentioned is like self-custody. I think it's super important, and I try to always mention it in the episodes, like why it's so important, and why we need to protect this right of having self-custody. Because you're right, of course, why would anyone ban self-custody of fiat? You could make an argument it's not even possible to self-custody your fiat because they can still steal it from you. But they might want to consider banning self-custody of Bitcoin because this is serious freedom technology and nobody can do anything against that. And even if they take away the right to self-custody, you can still self-custody because it's just remembering 12 or 24 words. You can literally stamp your whole seed phrase on like one tiny wash or anything like that. Like you can take that anywhere you want, and you can be safe with that. So I just wanted to highlight the importance of self-custody. Actually, when you orange pill people, how early do you bring self-custody up? Because I usually bring self-custody up like once they are a little bit down the line. I don't want to like overwhelm them with self-custody right away.
Well, this last gentleman that I helped, who actually ended up buying a substantial amount of Bitcoin, he wanted to know, I mentioned self-custody to him right away because of the amount that he was buying, and he wanted to learn about it. And so I did my best. I recommended a certain cold storage for him, and I helped him set it up, and I helped him learn how to use it. And he was very thrilled about it. He couldn't believe that you could actually just take this anywhere in the world and you take your money with you. I mean, it is kind of fascinating in that sense that you could remember your seed phrase if you really wanted to, and literally move your money in your mind from point A to point B. It's a lot to tell somebody new. You don't want to start telling them you could store your money in your brain. I mean, you'll overload them, right? So I'm careful when I orange pill somebody or I talk to them about Bitcoin, kind of read them first and see who I'm dealing with, because we're not all the same. Some people pick it up faster. Some people pick it up slower. I like to kind of find out what they do first, kind of read them a little bit before I start going into what to do. And then I talk to them about maybe a strategy. I listen to them. Oh, I don't have a lot to invest. I would definitely never start out with someone who's buying $25 a week, start out in self-custody. I usually refer them to one of the exchanges that I like to use that they can buy Bitcoin at no cost, basically at spot price. So that way they're not even paying a fee on it. And I help them set that up and get going, get their toe in the water so they can watch this thing, the wheel start turning, and they can watch this thing. And as time goes by, if they start accumulating more, they're buying more. And I start mentioning, you can also self-custody this stuff if you want. And so everybody's different. There is no just set rule that I have for everybody. I found that, what works for one person may not work for another. How well people absorb information. And the one thing I found is I try to be so careful not to overload them, because I've done that before. I want to talk Bitcoin. So, sometimes I get into, SHA-256 encryption. And, I start talking, it's like, whoa, nodes. And, it's like, you just lose them. And that's no good. You don't want to lose them, because if they think it's too complicated for them, then they don't want to go there. Because people generally, they don't like to talk about things that they're uneducated about, right? That's why nobody likes to talk about money, because so many people are uneducated about it. Nobody wants to really talk about what actually money is. So I just take it easy with people. It's a one-on-one, case basis, and I kind of feel them out and see how they accept the information. And then I wait for the questions, Robin, because to me, that's how I know if I got somebody that really is interested. It's not so much me speaking to them, it's the questions they're asking me. If they're asking me intelligent questions, oh, I love that. But if they're not asking me any questions, or the questions are just not so good, then I know I've got to try something different. So I try a different approach. So it's not the same for anybody. And I don't think it's ever going to be one box fits all or one shoe fits all for everybody. It isn't the case. What about you? I mean, do you do some boots on the ground, orange peeling?
Not as extreme as you do it. You are definitely a role model when it comes to just walking around and orange pilling people. What I do, and because like I'm well now, I have a pretty huge family with a lot of relatives. So I jump on calls regularly when someone is like, "Hey, what's Bitcoin?" and they're like, "Hey," because I have a lot of cousins, I have a lot of uncles, like a huge family. If they all get together, like we are 100+ people. And then they all have also relatives and families on their own. So there is this, like when the price rips a little bit, where I have the one or the other Google Meets, a Zoom call where people like ask me, "Oh, like how do you buy Bitcoin? Where to buy? Like why and how and stuff like that." I do that, but it's not that much. It's like 5 or 6 calls a year. Like it's not that crazy. And I just like I also saw that the people closest to me are the biggest orange pilled ones. So my girlfriend is super orange pilled, my mom, my dad, my sister. So like the closer you are to me, like the more orange pilled you are, because my whole career, my whole life revolves around Bitcoin. Like that's all I talk about. And so that's what I saw. Some cousins that are really close to me, like friends that are close to me, also really orange pilled. But then if I don't have that much contact to someone, they're not as orange pilled. And what I've noticed now is the ones that are really orange pilled in my family, they are starting now to spread the message in the family. So I was the first kind of Bitcoiner in my family. It kind of spread out a little bit, but I'm not doing as much like on the street, like just with random people or like strangers and like talking with them. That I only do when I'm with friends and there's like a new guy there and people are like, "Hey, like this is the Bitcoin guy, talk to him." And I'm like, "Yeah, like what do you want to know?" I try to do it more with the podcast and just be known in Bitcoin, and then a lot of people come to me with questions. A lot of people that I know somehow in my life, I guess.
Well, that's funny that you're the Bitcoin guy in your circle, and I'm certainly I'll be walking down the sidewalk and I'll hear someone say, "Hey, there's the Bitcoin guy." I mean it's not hard to spot me most of the time because I'm walking around wearing a Bitcoin shirt of some sort, and I'd love to talk Bitcoin with them if they want to talk about it. Unfortunately, a lot of them don't, but a lot of them have. I mean, a lot of them. Hey, you still into that Bitcoin thing? And yeah, of course. And 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 it's like, no, they think like you're going to get out of it or something, like it's just something you're in temporarily. And I say, no, it's my life. I'll be in this for the rest of my life. It's a way of life for me. It's enriched my life. I've got 2 great friends. I want to shout out to Don and Dominic out in the desert. They're great friends I met out there because of Bitcoin. It's another positive way that Bitcoin has changed my life. It gave me 2 great friends. And, I'm so grateful for that, because that's one thing that if you get into Bitcoin, you got to have some kind of a support group. You know how hard it is if you're on your own. And probably when you started out with your family and friends and stuff, it's really difficult to start talking to them about this. But if you have a support group, you find one good friend or 2 good friends. I happen to make a couple great friends because of Bitcoin that has been a gift. It's harder for me as I get older to have people that I meet that I want to invite into my friendship circle. But this has been something that makes it easy. We have something in common, and it's enriched my life. Meeting these 2 guys and being friends with these guys. We're constantly texting each other, sending each other information, and it's just great to have that support group there. And we've learned and helped each other out too, which is nice. It's 6 eyes instead of I have 6 eyes out there working in 6 years out there, and I find stuff sometimes because of them that I wouldn't have found And they do, likewise for them. So get a support group out there, get one like-minded person, start out with one and then try to go to two and, try to keep building that support group, because it is tough to get started in this, especially you're going to get a lot of negativity. And, that's unfortunate, because you're just getting negativity from people who say, you're wrong about Bitcoin, but yet they know nothing about Bitcoin. And that's just crazy if you think about it. I've had many people tell me how wrong I was about Bitcoin, and they know nothing about Bitcoin. It's just nonsense. So hopefully that helps out some of your viewers too. Find a support group.
Yeah, it's like if someone comes with like, oh, but like Bitcoin is so bad for the environment, and I'm like, do you know what the difficulty adjustment is? And they're like, what? Okay, you didn't study it, so you have no clue about it.
Yeah, like, who's Satoshi Nakamoto? That's the sushi chef down the street at the restaurant, ain't it? No. Yeah, you ask a few questions and they absolutely know nothing about Bitcoin, but you're wrong. And it's mind-boggling. And it's there are some people I've unfortunately had to just stop talking about it, because I didn't want to lose a friend or something. It's like, okay, I get it. You're never going to study this. You have to learn about it. You have to put in your time. You have to put energy in to get energy out. So learn about it, study it. Don't just buy it and let it sit there. It'll still work for you, but again, it's going to enrich your life. I can't think of too many things in my life, excluding family, that's enriched my life as much as Bitcoin. I've only had a handful of things that I can say have really done something this profound for me in my life. And Bitcoin is definitely up there on the ladder. I mean, I think it's the number one position right now.
One thing that you've talked about before a little bit, I want to get it in as a last topic today. You said about the changing cycles, that you don't foresee like a big crash, a big downturn again. Why and how do you think the cycles will change?
Well, my main thesis for that, Robin, is very simple. And I never heard anybody else say this, but I just don't think there's enough time left. These bear markets are, especially the last one, I think was the most brutal bear market there's been in Bitcoin, because of all the fraud that got flushed out and all the bad actors that got flushed out. And that wasn't Bitcoin's fault. That was just humans, doing what humans do sometimes, and they get greedy and they commit crimes. And unfortunately, it was a bad bear market for people. But I think that for a bear market to exist, you have to have the time for it to exist. And I don't see, with all the adoption coming, with the next halving, just less than 3 years away now or so, I just don't, or like 36 months left, the next halving, I just don't see there being enough time for there to be another long drawn out bear market. Not to say we're not going to have pullbacks and corrections, but again, remember, those are just buying opportunities. Pullbacks are nothing more than sales. That's when I really smash the buy button. If I've got some extra money and Bitcoin has this drop, I just buy. I don't even worry about it anymore. I just smash buy as much as I can every time there's a sale. I don't see a correction or a crash. I just see a sale sign. And if it's a big sale, I go in heavy as I can. It's funny, when Bitcoin goes on sale, Robin, people scream and run out of the building screaming, right? But if their shoes go on sale, they don't. They like sales, but when your investments go on sale, that's not good. Of course, it's a good thing, and if you know what you're in and you know Bitcoin, then it's not a crash, it's a sale. It's just a sale. And, take advantage of it like you would if your shoes were half off. If Bitcoin goes to a half off sale again, I'll be buying. I'll be a buyer. It doesn't matter where it goes. I'm going to be a buyer, because all it's indicating at that time is that there's more sellers than buyers at that particular time. Eventually, they get exhausted every single time, and then what happens? We get this massive rebound, and it continues to be volatile on the whip in value. But I don't think we're going to have the traditional 4-year cycles anymore. How can we? Geez, Michael Saylor alone is buying up, years of supply. And I agree with you on the 15 million Bitcoin idea. I think that's pretty darn accurate. I think there's probably only 15 million Bitcoin. And the truth is, most of those will never be in circulation, if ever. So the amount that's going to be available to people it's going to be small. But if you're out there and you're sitting on zero right now and you just buy one Satoshi, I got good news for you. And I actually sent a gal one Satoshi, by the way, not to the blockchain, but from an exchange to an exchange. And that was just to test if I could do it. But if you're sitting on zero and you just have one Satoshi, you've got more Bitcoin than the majority of the planet, even with just one Satoshi, because the majority of the planet doesn't even have one Satoshi. So if you think that dollar cost averaging in $5, $10, $15 a week can't add up, or whatever you can afford, it can add up, because those Satoshis are going to get more expensive over time. And I've just watched it for 8 years now, consistently watch those Satoshis getting more expensive. I can buy less and less and less and less and less of them. And so, get off zero, people.
With one Satoshi, you have more than the German government. So that's something
It's funny. Yeah, I remember
to
when
be
they
proud of, I guess.
That's ridiculous. Yeah, that's funny. Good point. That's funny.
We have one question for every of my returning guests on the show. And the question is, what have you learned outside of Bitcoin since you have last been on the podcast?
Okay, that's a great question. And what I've learned is there's something more valuable than Bitcoin: time. Especially when you're younger, you don't think about it as much. But when you grow older, and I keep, Robin, I take care of myself. I eat healthy. I exercise. I try to live a good, healthy, clean life. I don't have any bad habits, but I still know that my time is finite. And I know that it's running out slowly, like an hourglass. It's just going. So don't waste a minute. Bitcoin's actually even helped me understand time even better. And so I value every day out there, regardless if you're rich, poor, just starting out, whatever your situation is, just value that time. Live. It's great to plan for the future, but you also have to live every day, like it's your last. I know a lot of people out there have heard this stuff. As you get older, I'm just warning you, it starts really, really hitting you hard how valuable your time is. So thanks to Bitcoin, my time is, in my opinion, guaranteed to be mine. I mean, when I retired, I thought, okay, do I have enough to keep my time mine? And I started watching the inflation kick in. I thought, oh my gosh, this is, wow, what's going to happen if this inflation keeps going like this, for the next 20 or 30 years, and I live that long? Am I going to run out of money? Well, now I really feel that I'll never run out of money. So my time should belong to me. I should be able to use my time to do good things and to help people out. I'll give you something off subject here. Every year on New Year's, my New Year's resolution is the same. And it's simple. Every year, I want to be a better person than I was the year before. And so I try to make sure every year that I have a different mindset to do better for myself, do better for humanity, be a better person, be the change I want to see. And I'll leave it at that, Rob.
I love that. I full-heartedly agree with that also. And yeah, I just leave it at that. We have an end routine, as you know, where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you the question, what's the most unpopular opinion you hold on Bitcoin?
What's the most popular opinion that I hold?
The most unpopular.
Okay. The most unpopular opinion that I hold about Bitcoin, and I think you touched on it earlier, that, and this is the reason it's so funny. I've never gotten in an argument with somebody, but Margaret and I were at a street fair, and I was orange pilling this guy. I was talking about Bitcoin. I had a Bitcoin shirt on. He asked me about it. So, and that's how the dialogue often opens up. People will ask. So as I was talking to him about it, some guy literally came out of nowhere and started yelling and screaming at me, telling me how Bitcoin's destroying the earth and that the mining process and everything, it's bad for the earth. And he literally started, I thought he was going to start swinging at me. I thought, oh my God, and so I tried to calm him down a little bit, and anything that I said to him, about his opinion, this unpopular opinion, in my words, it just made it was like throwing, it was like throwing gas on a fire. The guy just got madder the more I disagreed with him. And I finally said, okay, stop talking. So I stopped talking. And eventually I wasn't giving him anything. And I just was looking at him, and he just walked away, and his wife actually ended up getting so mad at him, screaming at him, "What are you doing, honey?" Yelling at that guy. So my most unpopular opinion probably is that, people's opinion of Bitcoin being bad for the environment, when it's actually a solution to our energy problems. How you solve the world's energy problems is by demand, Robin. That's how you solve it. And that's what Bitcoin, it's doing so many positive things for power grids. So that's the answer to that question.
I love that story. I haven't had that happening to me, even though I run around with the Bitcoin t-shirt every day. But I definitely had some people point the environment thing out. And yeah, it gets less and less, I guess. People now see the actual data, the actual science behind it, and then it actually doesn't make any sense to say Bitcoin is bad for the environment. But some people still have the headlines in their heads without any actual looking into Bitcoin, I guess.
I hope.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, I also it gets better. I feel that. But
I want to say one thing, Robin. I just have to share this with you because you'll get a kick out of it. Sorry if we're a little over our timeline, but we volunteer our time at a film festival in Palm Springs and talk about people still carrying old thoughts in their head. When you say, I hope that people are outgrowing this opinion, I hope so too. But I was talking to a lady about Bitcoin. This was probably 5 or 6 years ago. And she asked me what backed Bitcoin, what backed it. And I looked at her and I said, energy backs it. I mean, in a nutshell, it's energy, and I said, what backs the dollar? And she told me gold. And this was a lady, a senior citizen, and I thought, oh my gosh, she still thinks gold backs the dollar. And I think I broke her heart when I told her, hey, that stopped in 1971 with Richard Nixon. We're not on a gold standard anymore. There's nothing backing the dollar but the faith in the American government. But anyway, we'll leave it at that, Robin. This was great. I had fun. Thank you.
Yeah, it was really cool. I love that story. I think there's if you go out on the street and ask like 200 people if the US dollar is still backed by gold, I think you would be astonished by how many people still believe that. I've heard that even in Europe. So it's crazy for me that people still have that belief in their mind, even though it's just absolutely not true at all. But yeah, people carry those old opinions around a long time. I just hope it's not the case with Bitcoin and environment. But yeah, anyways, thank you so much, Jim, for being on and for taking the time. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask your question, and reach out to you?
Well, thank you too, Robin. Again, this is just this is great. I really hope some other podcasters out there eventually do the same thing you're doing. I love how you bring up, as I go by my handle, to answer your question, I go by John Q Lunchbucket, and on X, that's how you can reach out to me or follow me or whatever you want to do. I don't really care about people following me, but if you want to reach out to me or say something, or it's okay. I'm not on there for any reason but to be able to plug in and read content and stuff. And sometimes I do some posting, but so it's John Q Lunchbucket is my handle on X, and just so you know, Robin. What John Q Lunchbucket represents is John Q taxpayer. So I'm just kind of representing the average hardworking person out there who goes to work, carries his in the 50s, it was real popular to go to work, kiss your wife, have a good day, honey, and walk out of the door with your lunch box in your hand and go to work and work your 40 hours and come home and pay your taxes and, be a good citizen and all that. That's kind of where I came up with that handle from. I just kind of representing everybody out there.
I love that. Thank you so much, Jim, for being on the show and taking the time. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye. this content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.